podcast. Your name is IRLnash. Welcome to the Talking Mindset as always. And today, we got one more. It's going to be streaming services. One is worse than you think by Matty Balls. Shout out to Young Goat. Let's get to it.
Streaming services and the subscription model that accompanies them have quietly been taking over our lives. From the music we listen to the TV we watch, to the games we play, and even to the cars we drive. I don't think I need to go into detail for you guys to think about how all of these little subscription fees we are paying for this, that, and the third is slowly adding up over time to a number that isn't so small. I think we can all agree that both streaming services and subscription services have gotten a little bit out of hand. But this is a new problem. Especially before the digital age, this wasn't really an issue. When you bought something, you owned it. You weren't renting everything out to the point where if you missed a payment 1 month, it no longer belonged to you. So how did we get here? To the point where a lot of what we consume, especially entertainment, we don't actually own. How did streaming services become so dominant? And how did we let the subscription model become the primary payment model for many things? Well, first, I think it's a little important to understand a lot of the problems that come with streaming services. There's probably no area where streaming has become more dominant than
Laziness. It's a very simple, easy question. Laziness. It's way easier for you to just pay a subscription, do this, instead of going to the movie theater, or going and getting the shit at the damn Blockbuster and renting it, or going and waiting until it come out on actual DVD and going and buying it and then bringing it home and then having a DVD player. It's like, no, bro, you just need TV. It's laziness. It's simple as that.
music. It's estimated that 289 million Americans use music streaming services, or about 85% of the US population. And of course, among younger Americans, the numbers are much higher. In a lot of ways, I think this has been a good thing. Music is more accessible now than ever before, and you have every single song pretty much ever made at your fingertips, wherever you go.
It's so easy to become a podcaster with Riverside. First, go to Riverside and open an account.
And for the most part, it's free. If you don't want ads though, it'll only be about $10 a month. If you compare that to like the 60s where a single record costs about $3, a record player might be like $45 and speakers would be around $50, it's a pretty big difference. And it may sound affordable, but adjusted for inflation, a single album whose songs you weren't even guaranteed
like 12
to enjoy,
bucks.
every single one, would cost about $35.
Damn!
And the equipment needed to enjoy it would be much more. So yeah, it's definitely cheaper to pay $10 a month than it is to buy a $35 record for every album you like. As a result, the average American today spends more than 20 hours a week listening to music, which is more than ever before. In the 60s, by contrast, the average American bought fewer than 2 new records a year. So the positives of music being affordable and accessible are very clear. But there are a lot of people who think it's also gone a bit too far. It may be easier than ever before to listen to music, but in some ways it's also becoming harder to make a living from it. Music streaming services are so cheap because the payouts to artists are so small. Once the music labels have their cut taken out, Spotify, for example, only pays artists around a tenth of a cent per stream. With physical record sales, however, on a major label, the artist will often make as much as 30% of the sale. So if I were to buy a copy of Clips's recent album Let God Sort 'Em Out on vinyl for $25, the band would probably make about $7. For them to make that same amount of money on streaming, or Spotify in particular, I would have to listen to their song about 7,000 times, or the equivalent of listening to their songs 24/7 for about 2 weeks. Of course, I don't have access to the recording contract, so I couldn't tell you the exact numbers, but that's roughly how it works. In the past, plenty of musicians have entirely withdrawn their music from streaming services in protest of these pay rates. Taylor Swift boycotted in 2014, while the Beatles were entirely absent from streaming services for almost a decade. But obviously, most artists who leave always end up returning because music streaming services are so dominant. If you don't put your music up on Spotify and Apple Music and all that, you're pretty much killing your career. The dominance has completely changed the economics of the music industry. Before streaming, musicians made the vast majority of their money from record sales. That meant musicians like the Beatles could go without touring for years at a time solely to focus on making their music. It also meant if you had a few classic albums or songs that people were always going to be listening to, you were pretty much set for life. But nowadays, that's not quite the case. Most artists nowadays are making the majority of their money from tours, which is one of the main reasons concert tickets seem to be so expensive these days. Artists are also increasingly relying on merchandise, advertising, and other ways of cashing in on their fame, which is probably why it feels like every single musician is trying to sell you something.
Merch be trash too. Like some of the concepts and shit be dope, but a lot of times, bro, you get a $50 shirt and that bitch is fucked up after you wear it once.
Things like clothing and merch to weird stuff like Rick Ross branded ceramic car spray, or in Drake's case, extremely sketchy gambling websites. But the streaming industry hasn't only hurt artists' pockets. Many people believe that it's actually hurt the quality of the music as well. You've probably noticed that since like the mid 2010s, the music topping the charts has been a little bit more boring. Imagine Dragons, Maroon 5, Ed Sheeran. Commercially, these artists were equivalent of the Beatles, Eminem, or Queen in their respective eras. But their music is obviously not quite as good. Except maybe Maroon 5, I don't know, man. They had some bangers. I've talked about this extensively in recent videos, so I won't go too far into detail, but just know that the systems that streaming services have in place encourage music that just simply isn't quite as good. Most artists and their record labels in particular are aware of this system. So musicians are incentivized to create music that won't be too complicated or overwhelming on the first listen. What streaming platforms are encouraging are bland, unoriginal songs that can blend into a background playlist in a way that makes you want to leave it on.
The other way that bands and music fans lost is that because streaming is more or less free, you have access to everything. There's just but significantly less focus on actually listening to and loving music. If you can listen to anything you want all of the time for free, if something is uninteresting to you after 3 seconds, you don't give it any attention. Music, interesting, in-depth, curious, challenging music takes time to focus on. Music has definitely not gotten better, and I'm saying this as a music fan since I was a child, since streaming happened. Streaming doesn't make music better. Streaming makes music it makes music have to be a commercial in order for it to.
This is the issue I always have with these arguments, though, is like, then why aren't people being more subjective to supporting the underground and the unique artists that they do see? That's the weird thing that so many people focus on the bad artists that are popular. But why don't you focus on the good artists who aren't and you help them become popular? It's just a weird thing for me, bro.
Potentially grab somebody's attention.
It's also hard not to think that Spotify is devaluing music with some of the statements that their CEO, Daniel Ek, has made. He's claimed that the cost of creating music now is close to zero, and he also said it's not enough for musicians to release albums only every 4 or 5 years. He's also blamed labels when Spotify themselves are one of the lowest paying streaming services.
Many people still think Spotify doesn't pay the artists. Who should they direct their inquiries to, if not to you at Spotify?
Yeah, well, technically it is true that we don't pay artists directly. So what we do is we pay all the rights holders. So
Lying bitch.
I mean, we're talking about 2 decades of.
We pay the
Does
record
that mean
labels,
record labels?
yeah,
Yes.
record labels, but also the music publishers.
And I think there's one other major problem when it comes to music streaming services
You're a
in
liar.
particular, and it's the fact that you don't actually own any of the music. For example, if Spotify wanted to change the music, they could. Let's say you really enjoyed the original mix of The Life of Pablo by Kanye. Well, that's unfortunate because it's no longer available on a single streaming platform. Even worse, in my opinion, Spotify or other services could just remove the music if they don't want it on there. For example, in 2017, Spotify removed all of XXXTentacion's music from their playlist and recommendation features because it supposedly violated their guidelines on hateful content. It was only after Kendrick Lamar threatened to remove his entire catalog that this policy was abandoned. Although even then, other controversial artists like Tay-K, for example, remained in the same situation. And I'm sure there's more examples of Spotify just straight up taking music off
That's
the
crazy.
platform. But I think the most egregious example I can think of is their release of the car thing. If you bought the $90 Spotify car thing, you would get a small touchscreen tablet designed to be plugged into your car's dashboard, allowing you to control Spotify and play
I've
music
never
in your
even
car.
heard of
Which,
this.
of course, if you didn't have one of those built-in things on your car, I don't know, I have an old car, but if you didn't have that built in, this would be very helpful.
I've
The
never
car
even
thing,
heard
though,
of
was a
this.
huge flop, losing the company $31 million. So, less than 3 years after being officially released, the car thing's functionality and software support was ended completely, rendering it useless. This still blows my mind to this day, but Spotify somehow had the power and got away with completely bricking and disabling something that many people had bought for $90. $90. Imagine you bought something for $90 and then it was just ripped away from you. Like, I feel like that's just a scam. It's to the point where if you actually even do own something, it doesn't matter because companies can still take it from you. And while I am primarily a music channel and I can acknowledge that streaming services have caused a lot of problems for the music industry, I think that both streaming and subscription services are a bit worse in other industries, particularly when it comes to TV. It may be true that Americans use streaming for music more, but it's not by much. In fact, it's actually estimated that about 83% of Americans use streaming for TV, which is just 2% less than those who use it for music. While Spotify and music services helped popularize the subscription service model, platforms like Netflix were some of its pioneers. Netflix used to be a mail-to-home service, which basically meant they were like a Blockbuster that mailed you your DVDs. By the way, rest in peace to Blockbuster. But basically, you'd pay this monthly fee, you'd get discs in the mail, and then when you returned them, you could get new ones. And then Redbox came around and was crushing it for a while. Not sure if you guys remember Redbox, but that was gas, especially when they added video games. But I digress. Then as websites like YouTube began to take off, Netflix realized they could start streaming shows. This made it so that customers could watch any title, anywhere, anytime. Something that you couldn't do with regular cable TV unless you recorded every single episode and then somehow brought it with you. Because a lot of you may not even remember this, but back in the day they used to have like a broadcast schedule and things would air live. I mean, it still does, but no one really watches cable anymore. But even then, a lot of streaming services offer these pricey bundles to watch sports live. Regardless, Netflix was so much better and convenient that it quickly began to dominate the entertainment industry. Back then, Netflix had a lot of great shows you could watch without too much competition.
Man.
But
The Office, that was the one that I really, man, when I got The Office, I was like, oh, this shit fire. Because The Office came on, like every day at like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. And I just hated the show. Like, I just didn't understand it. I didn't know what they were doing. I didn't understand why they looked at the cameras. Like, I thought it was just stupid. I just was like, this is a stupid-ass show. And then when The Office was on Netflix, and, bruh, I took that shit from the beginning and realized what the show was and that it was a mockumentary and all these other things. And I was like, oh, this shit fire. I fuck with this. And The Office is like my favorite show now. So
now, since there are so many streaming services in the TV industry, they are buying the rights to different shows, movies, and franchises. So if you like a variety of shows and movies, there's a good chance you will need to have subscriptions to a variety of services, which is honestly at the point where you're going to end up paying more than you would have for cable. You got Netflix, Hulu, Paramount, Disney Plus, Max, Crunchyroll. There are so many streaming services that are each slowly siphoning your money. I'm sure all of us have had some sort of experience where a new show comes out, you're excited to watch it,
and
you Google where to watch it, and it's
Yep.
on this brand new streaming service you've never heard of, or it's on the one that you don't have, which is extremely frustrating. Apart from this making things expensive, it also gets rid of the security of ownership. If I bought Netflix a few years ago to watch The Office, that sucks because now it's on a different service. Even worse than that, if there's a show or movie you like, it can just be taken off of the streaming services and you will have no other way of watching it. For example, over the course of this next year, Netflix is getting rid of over 100 of their original series, which means you will either have to get a new subscription to watch them, or maybe they're just getting rid of them. I'm not even sure. Another example, and unfortunately this is the only one I can think of, but recently I just watched It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and I learned that there's a couple episodes that they don't have on streaming, but because I watched them on a different thing, I could watch them. But yeah, they banned these from streaming, and there's really no way to watch them unless you want to pirate it. Another problem that comes up with TV streaming services is
they do that on Disney Plus a lot, especially with a lot of the and they just be like, bro, I don't feel like you should censor this shit. I feel like if you made it and you were okay with putting it on there, then you should put it on there in the way that it was made. And I'm not saying that to be like you are erasing history, but sometimes you have to have credible sources of what actually happened. And you getting rid of it to make yourself look better is not how I fuck with that. I would rather it be seen in the full-fledged for what it was and what it is. That's just me personally.
Music ones, and it's that they are actually making TV worse. As I mentioned earlier, Spotify and other streaming services prioritize inoffensive, bland songs. No chance, no locks, no walls to climb. Time and money, I'm taking my time. Songs that have
I feel like all TV is like cheap right now. Like they try to make everything cheap. They try to do everything cheap. They try to all the sets look cheap. Everything just looks super played out, bro.
or chance of being skipped in a playlist. And they also like songs that people can comfortably listen to in the background, which, unbeknownst to me, these streaming services are attempting a similar thing. In a very similar sense, TV streaming services are expecting you not to fully be paying attention to the shows that you're watching, instead expecting you to be on your phone and maybe only half watching.
She'd heard from so many showrunners who are given notes by the streaming channels that they say, this isn't second screen enough. The viewer is expected to be on their phone, kind of half doing something else while your crime drama or whatever is playing. And you just can't make it as complicated as you have, because they're not going to understand it, because they're only going to be half concentrating on your show.
This is funny to me because it's a pet peeve of mine when I'm watching a show with someone and they're on their phone, because, like, I don't know, I'm so locked in.
I'm trying to get so much better at that, because I'm not being rude, because it's usually nobody ever here, so I'm just always watching TV alone. But bro, I find myself on my phone for hours at a time sometimes, just doing shit, and I'm just like, bro, just put the phone down and chill for a minute and watch some TV and hang out. And then 5 minutes later, I got my fucking phone in my hand again, G. And that shit just really is very out of body, because it's like, bro, I'm literally telling you not to do this, and you literally just have impulse and addiction to just keep on fucking picking your phone up and scrolling and getting that dopamine hit. Getting them dopamine hits.
But I guess a lot of people do this.
Crazy.
And this may explain why a lot of shows, especially shows that might be Netflix originals or shows produced by the streaming provider, might be a bit lackluster. They're also stretching out the releases of shows so that your subscription has to renew rather than posting it all at once like they may have before. And probably the worst offense that these streaming services have committed is raise the prices a bunch. After COVID, a lot more people were home and watching TV, so not only did the streaming services crack down on password sharing, but they also realized they could raise prices, and there wasn't much people could do about it. Disney Plus was launched at $6.99 per month with no ads, and now its ad-free version is $18.99. Hulu launched at $8 a month with ads, and now it's new.
And I think at that time you could get the bundle with that, Hulu, and ESPN for like $7.99 too.
$11.99, not to mention their super expensive live TV tier. Netflix launched at $7.99, and now its most premium option is $24.49 per month. Apple TV launched at only $4.99 a month, which is surprising, and now it is $12.99. And most of the other services follow a similar trend.
Crazy.
I don't think I need to go into much detail about
Tubi.
this. I'm sure most of you are familiar, or at
Tubi
least
to
somewhat
go.
aware of how frustrating these services can be. And believe it or not, it's not just music and TV where streaming and subscription services are making our lives more difficult. Now, streaming is one thing, but this model of digital products switching to subscription services has gotten kind of bad, to put it simply. On average, Americans are spending $273 a month on subscription services. Of course, a large chunk of those costs are coming from TV.
Bro, because you gotta think. So like I make music. So when I was younger, in 2013 or 14, I bought Pro Tools for the first time, Pro Tools 10 and 11. I spent like $400 or $300 and something dollars, and I got it for cheap because it was like $600. But I got it because I was in college at the time. So back then, if you had a college, and a lot of places still do this, if you had a college ID, you can get cheaper equipment and cheaper subscriptions and cheaper stuff because they just want to help college kids. So, I got Pro Tools, and I had that Pro Tools up until like 2 years ago, bro. Like, and that was what kept me on the older model computers, and using my older computers was because I was like, I have this Pro Tools and I know how to use it, and it's great and it works and it does what it, and again, like he's saying, I owned it. But then once everything got too past that marker, and now it's like you can't even get, a laptop that can use that Pro Tools 10 and 11 is like 2014, 2015 is the last years. Like, man, you think about how laptops work these days. You buying a 10-year-old laptop, that's risky. That's stupid too. But I say all of that to say, now I gotta spend $35 a month for Pro Tools every month, bro. So it's like I'm like, no, I don't spend that much for TV, but I do spend that much when you put my music subscriptions into that shit and shit like that. Like, I play Pokemon, my Nintendo subscription, even though that's only like $4 or something, but still, it starts at $4, it raises up, all of that stuff. But Yeah, man. That shit real.
and music streaming services, but there are
Everything's
many other
moving to that.
areas of our lives that the digital subscription service model is creeping in. Subscription services have actually been around for a long time. You actually used to be able to sort of subscribe to the milkman and he'd drop off milk at your house, and once you stopped paying him, he would just take you off his route. But when it comes to the rise of subscription services and digital products, this is a lot newer. Companies like Netflix and Spotify were instrumental in influencing this new wave of digital products that require subscriptions, and now it's beginning to reach far beyond just TV and music. One of the few things I remember from college is a term called forced scarcity. Artificial scarcity essentially
Adobe.
describes situations
Adobe's
where the
like
producers
that
or
too.
owners of a good restrict its availability to others beyond what is strictly necessary. And a perfect example of this is Adobe software. As a
Yep.
YouTuber,
I knew he was about to say that, bro. I low-key, I did know he was about to say that because I could already tell he was gearing up for
I
it.
regularly use software from Adobe such as Premiere Pro to edit videos or Photoshop for thumbnails. And back in the day, you could have bought both of these
Yep.
programs for around $500 total. I didn't have money like that back then, unfortunately. So nowadays, to access Adobe software, you can no longer buy it outright. Even though it's totally possible for you to keep the software once you buy it, Adobe decided to switch to a subscription service that cost me about $50 a month to own
Yep.
their programs. After just 10 months at this price, I will have effectively bought the programs outright. But I can't, so instead I've been paying $50 a month.
Today I'm recording vocals, then transforming them with Autotune's AI-powered plugin, Metamorph. This is a simple
For years, which over the lifespan of my channel would be like $3,000. Adobe in particular is actually so slimy and greedy that they got sued by the FTC, but that's a whole nother story. Subscriptions are getting so crazy to the point where you got to pay $100 a month to get autopilot in a Tesla, an option they have available if you don't want to buy it outright. And a lot of these subscription services make it very difficult to cancel, to the point where the FTC proposed a rule revision called click to cancel, with the whole goal being to make it easier to cancel subscription services. The lobbyists for these companies said that this rule would cost businesses $2.7 billion, which is crazy to think about the fact that they basically admitted to making $2.7 billion off of people who aren't able to cancel their subscriptions but likely aren't using them. And it makes sense. When I tried to cancel one Adobe subscription, I found out that they signed me up for an annual plan billed monthly, so they charged me for like $300 for the rest of the year. And in a rare moment, I was so upset that I called and got it refunded, and I think they refunded it because the FTC thing was going on. Regardless though, it's very ridiculous. I've actually had a similar concern with
wild.
Xbox Game Pass as well. As consoles are releasing without disc drives and video games
Yeah,
are going fully
that is
digital, it almost
that's actually what I was thinking about. You know, the more and more, like, thank God for Pokemon, you can still get cartridges and shit like that, but or Nintendo, you can still get cartridges, but it's just like that digital landscape where it's like everything's gonna be digital. There's no discs. There's no it's all subscription based. Like, bro, you gonna have to pay a subscription to play each game per month moving forward. Like, that shit gonna be crazy.
gaming could be moving in a similar direction as streaming services. The Xbox Game Pass is another subscription service with different tiers ranging from $10 to $30 a month. It's a similar situation where if you game a lot, sure, it makes sense to get it, especially if you're playing a wide variety of games, but for most people, it'll probably just end up costing them more in the long run than if they just bought the games outright. Now, I don't think this is a big problem now, and I'm sure gamers won't ever let it get as bad as TV streaming services, but just imagine a world where Nintendo, PlayStation, Steam, and Xbox all started buying up exclusive titles and putting them on their own passes. With no disc drives and no options to buy games outright, this could very well be the direction in which games go. I don't know if that's possible, but I mean, that could be a thing. I don't know. It's always worried me. But these are just a few random areas I can see these streaming services and subscription services creeping into our lives in possibly uncomfortable ways, which has left a lot of consumers doing something kind of strange and something.
Shit, people pay subscription services to go to fucking Costco and Sam Club. Like, literally, to go grocery shopping.
Because of the modern age streaming and subscription services, we are left with a few problems. You no longer own half of what you buy. The fracturing of streaming has you spending just as much, if not more, than cable, and it's actually lowering the quality of content, whether it be music or television. And this has left people returning to one of two things. The first of which is the major return of physical media. All over my YouTube page, I've seen tons of people switching back to physical media, which is pretty cool. All of these problems are why more and more music fans are abandoning streaming services entirely and going back to CDs and vinyl. From 2010 to 2023 alone, the size of the vinyl market has increased by 18 times. And of course,
but the vinyl market is also a merchandise market. So, and I'm not saying people don't listen to their vinyl records. A lot of people do. It's just there are a lot of people like me who don't listen to their vinyl records. They just have them there because people that I know, that's their merchandise.
not the only non-streaming option. Physical media is definitely more expensive and less convenient than music streaming, but with physical media you do actually own the music. Instead of letting the faceless Spotify algorithm progressively feed you blander and blander songs, with no guarantee they were even made by real artists, you have complete control over what you listen to. I can also say that having a physical copy of your favorite album definitely brings you a lot closer to the music. The same can be said for DVDs or video games, and one of my favorite parts of physical media is when you buy a CD or a record and they have like a cool poster or sticker or something inside. It's always a fun little surprise. On top of this, people are switching to MP3 players, opting for digital cameras instead of iPhone cameras, and overall trying to dumb everything down to how it used to be.
As I'm editing this, I'm realizing I don't know if I made my point like clear enough about why physical media is important, but I think this sums it up. In 20 years from now, I might want to play Modern Warfare 2, but who's to say in 20 years that Modern Warfare 2 won't be on the Xbox Game Pass, and that I might not have the new Xbox, but I can still go back and play on my old Xbox with my old disc. The same could be said about this record. Who's to say that this will be available on streaming services in 20 years? And you can make that same argument for TV or anything else. There's no way to really know that my favorite
I'm saying you made this point very clear, my G. Like, you didn't have to reiterate
show
this.
or movie will be on streaming services, and if it is, who's to say in 20 years I will have that exact streaming service,
but you
it won't be $50.
But you won't have the thing is that in 20 years, the things that you use to watch those streaming services or to do whatever you do now, they probably aren't going to be what you use anymore anyway. Like, that's just how it progressively moves. Like, you don't see a lot of people playing PlayStation 2s, bro. You don't see a lot of people playing Nintendo Wiis. Are there some people? Yeah. But if you want to go buy, like, a brand new PlayStation 2, like, brand new, or, you know, somebody who's had one, whatever, you gonna spend just as much as you is on the new game system, bro. Have you tried to buy a Game Boy Color recently? Bro, have you tried to buy any Pokemon cartridge of the old Emeralds or Crystals with an actual battery still in it? The original battery still in it? Shit. Nah, bro. That don't happen no more, G. So the physical media dies as the technology that's used to play the physical media dies as well. And then we're not remaking those technologies or re-enhancing those technologies or giving ourselves a different way of using this media, then it still doesn't matter, to be quite frank.
Month, or you know what I'm saying. If you actually really enjoy something and you don't own it, you run the risk of not having access to that in the future. And if you do want to access it, you may have to pay for it again. You may have to pay for the subscription. You may forget to cancel the subscription, or it may be very difficult to cancel the subscription. There's a lot of problems that come with this.
The problem with this, though, is like I said, it's pretty expensive and inconvenient. It's a lot harder to go to the record store or the DVD store than it is to just search for something online, which is why a lot of people are going back to piracy. For a long time, the innovation of streaming services was great. It came at a time where it made streaming more convenient than piracy, since piracy was running rampant at that time. But now, after all of the fracturing of streaming services, the major increase in prices, and the lack of ownership, people are now switching back to piracy.
Niggas doing that
downloading
stream
of copyrighted material takes up 24% of the
niggas be doing that stream east, watching the games and shit. Oh, I hope I ain't hating.
bandwidth, which is a crazy stat to think about. I've seen a handful of people talking about the return of physical media, but the return of piracy is on a whole nother level. In 2020, piracy reached a low of 130 billion reported website visits, but in 2024, that number went up to 216 billion. And apparently in Sweden, 25% of people surveyed reported pirating in 2024. Netflix and Spotify originally beat piracy because it was easier to use these services than it was to go to a janky, slow-to-load illegal website. But now, especially when it comes to TV, it's easier to go to these janky websites
A
than
to
it
Z
is to subscribe to
films, A to Z films and shit like that. Yeah.
streaming services every time you want to watch a new show. And I'm not going to tell you guys to pirate
1,
stuff,
2, 3
but
movies.
you definitely shouldn't be paying for it the way things are going. It's time for a change, and I think the consumers are making that very clear. If you like this video, you might like my video on why Spotify is so bad and why so many people are leaving it. It's a lot more in depth than I talked.
Shit, we don't have to tap in with that one a different day. Shout out to Young King doing his thing as always. Keep making these videos. I thought that was the video. Yeah, I'm about to put this in my watch later.
Lately, I have seen.
And this come out 2 months ago. Hey, let's save it. All right, hey, shout out to Young King doing this thing as always.